Hi everyone, I have a super special treat for you. I think this is the first time I've ever made a video tutorial for one of my signature food themed scarves. We're going to be crocheting this super cute hot cocoa mug scarf. And I'm releasing the pattern now because the Hallmark channel is teaming up as part of Countdown to Christmas with Warm Up America for a Stitched with Sweets campaign. And this is for all of us to create and donate scarves to women's shelters for the holiday season. I'm donating the pattern for this hot cocoa mug scarf to the initiative, and that also means that the written version of the pattern is free on the Warm Up America website, which is warmupamerica.org. There you'll also be able to find a knit version of the mugs if you're interested in knitting. If you're not familiar with Warm Up America, it's a fabulous resource for crocheters and knitters who are interested in donating their time and their talent, but they don't quite know where to start. They have a constantly updated list of organizations and what those organizations are seeking at that moment in time, whether it's hats or scarves or blankets, and this time it's scarves. The other thing that I really love about Warm Up America is they're really aware that we all have different amounts of time and resources for charitable giving. So they have their own team of volunteers who can seam everything together. That means that if you don't have time to crochet an entire mug scarf, but you do want to participate in the donation and maybe crochet 1 or 2 or 3 pieces, you can still do that. Send your mugs to Warm Up America. You can find their address on their website and their volunteers will take care of the rest. Can you imagine how cute all your different mugs from all over will look in one scarf? It's gonna be so cute. As an extra special bonus to keep this project as accessible to all skill levels as possible, I also included a pattern for what I'm calling the Holiday Sweets section scarf. So it's rectangular panels, and there are 4 different panels, and sort of to keep everything thematically linked together, I used mugs as big appliques at the bottom of this scarf. There's this really cute lemon peel stitch texture, which I'm calling peppermint bark. And my favorite, baubles. I'm calling this the marshmallow bauble section. And then 2 different stripes. This horizontal stripe I'm calling a candy cane stripe. And then this vertical stripe I'm calling ribbon candy. Since these rectangular section patterns are pretty straightforward, this video is going to concentrate solely on the hot cocoa mug scarf. We're going to crochet 1 mug from start to finish, whether you want stripes or no stripes. I'll also show you how to work the really cute handle. It's really fun to hold on to. How to stitch your hot cocoa swirl, how to sew on your marshmallow pom-poms. The pattern also includes 2 super cute appliques, which are very optional, but I think are a nice detail. So we have this heart, and then also a candy cane. It's actually 3 patterns. The candy cane, you also get the pattern for the left candy cane and the right candy cane. I'm also going over how to block your work. I honestly do not hardly ever block my work, but it came in really handy for the mugs. You'll see why. And blocking is probably a lot easier than you might think. Finally, I'm going to show you how to seam everything together so you can complete one big beautiful hot cocoa mug scarf. Let's go over the yarn I'm going to be using in this tutorial. I'm crocheting with Lion brand Heartland. It's a worsted weight. You can use whatever yarn you have in your stash, but you probably want to stick to worsted weight so you can get your mug close to the size of my mugs. On a yarn label, it will be a number 4 weight, worsted weight. You'll want the color for the drink inside your mug. I'm doing hot cocoa, kind of a dark brown, a dark chocolatey brown. This is in the color Sequoia. And then you'll need a color for your mug, a main color, or MC, as it'll show up in your pattern. This is Redwood. And you can choose whether or not to add stripes to your mug. I will be in this tutorial, so I'm going to use this creamy color. This is called Acadia. If you don't want stripes, you just need that 1 color for your mug, and that's it. And I could use the Acadia to embroider the hot cocoa swirl on my mug, but I like incorporating another color for that, this caramel color. This one is called Indiana Dunes. So you really only need 3 colors to complete a mug, 4 if you want to add embellishments. I will be using a 5th color, pink, for my entire mug scarf. This is Heartland in Lassen Volcanic. There is a diagram that I include in the PDF. It's this layout. It's just suggested. Again, you can use any colors, any combination of colors, any number of colors that you want. Think about how you want all those colors to relate to each other. We will also go over some optional appliques, this candy cane and a heart. You can put those on or not, it's up to you. I'm just going to sort of do all the things in my example, so you have options and you'll know how to do things if you want to. For the marshmallows on my hot cocoa, I like to use pom-poms. These are 1/2 inch pom-poms. Again, this is optional, it's totally up to you. And I sew them down with white sewing thread and a sewing needle. For this project, I do like to block the work. This is a blocking mat, in case you've never seen one. It's foamy, so you can stick pins in it. You could also use probably a towel or an old cushion you're not really precious about anymore. And I want to show you why I suggest it for this project, and this may not happen to you. But for me, when I crochet my mug, and here you can see this is an example of no stripes. It's the exact same pattern, I just don't change color. My mug tends to angle, and I've tried altering the pattern. I've made a lot of different iterations of this mug pattern, and I can't seem to get rid of this angling. So in order to sort of fix that issue, I block. So you would put your piece on the mat, and I will do this when we get to that point, and you need to get some T-pins. They're just pins that are T-shaped and they don't rest. And you pin down your work. And then for acrylic, you really need to put some heat on it to block. For natural fibers, you could do wet blocking, but for acrylic, you should really heat block. And in that case, I would take a blow dryer to it, if you have a blow dryer, or an iron with hot steam, or a hand steamer. Something with heat that you can pass over this. And that really helps get the shape the way that I want it. And then basic crochet tools, I'm using an H8 or 5mm crochet hook to work with worsted weight yarn, a yarn or tapestry needle to weave in ends, and a pair of scissors. I'm grabbing this dark brown color and our hook. We're going to start with the drink in the middle, and that's worked in the round. And then we start working on one edge of the oval in rows, going back and forth, creating the body of the mug. And then we work one round of mug color all the way here to form an outline, and then separately we'll attach the mug handle. To begin, we will put a slip knot on our hook. However you put on a slip knot is fine. There's a million different ways to do so. And we'll begin our project with chain 12. To chain, you yarn over and pull through one, and that's one chain. Yarn over and pull through one, that's two chains. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For round one, the first two chains from your hook count as the first half double crochet of round one. So you'll work your first stitch into the third chain from your hook. So to work a half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into that third chain, yarn over and pull through one, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And that's one half double crochet. You'll continue to work one half double crochet into each chain until you have one chain left. So far that's 2 half double crochets, 3, 4, oops, watch out for your yarn splitting. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. I have one chain left, and in that last chain you'll work 5 half double crochets all in the same chain. It's 1, 2, 3. It'll sort of start spinning around, and let it do so. 4 and 5. This is putting us in a position now to work on the other side of our foundation chain. So you'll work 8 half double crochets evenly, and that means 1 half double crochet in each chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You'll have 1 more chain left, and you're going to work 3 half double crochets in that last chain. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to join the round by slip stitching. You can hear my dog, I have to take him out. Slip stitching into the top of your first chain 2. I know it's really hard to see, but I'm not slip stitching into the top of the first half double crochet. I'm slip stitching into the top of the first chain 2. So to slip stitch, you insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. And that's the end of round 1. You should have 26 stitches all the way around, and it's always a good idea to count stitches in case you made an error. It's not too late to pull some of this out and redo before you get too far along into the project. For round 2, we'll start with chain 2, 1, 2, and that first chain 2 counts as the first half double crochet of round 2. And we're going to work a second half double crochet in the same stitch. Yarn over, and you can see where the base of your chain is coming out from. Work a half double crochet in that same space. So that counts as 2 half double crochets. And then work another 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through all 3, and in the exact same space, the exact same stitch, another half double crochet. And then you'll work 1 half double crochet each in the next 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. To get around this bend, you'll work 2 half double crochets each in the next 5 stitches. So here's my first increase. 1, 2 half double crochets in the same stitch. Here's the second. 2 half double crochets in the same stitch. The third. The fourth, and the 5th. Continue down the line, working 1 half double crochet into the next 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. The last 3 stitches, you'll work 2 half double crochets in each of them, more increasing. Here's 1 and 2, the second increase, 1 and 2, and then the third decrease. You know I mean increase. Okay. 1 and then 2. And it might look like you have 1 more stitch, but that's actually the same stitch as the first stitch, and we already worked our chain 2 and half double crochet in there. So we're ready to join to the top of the first chain 2 with a slip stitch. And don't pull this slip stitch too tightly. What I want it to do is sort of lay right on top of that top of the chain 2, and then we can go ahead and break off our drink color or hot cocoa color, leaving enough just to weave in later. Don't touch anything yet. We're going to join a new color. I have my new color, which is my main color, my MC. It's red, and I'm going to join it with the first stitch of row 1 in the pattern, which is a slip stitch. So I'll insert my hook into the next stitch, and to orient yourself, that is the first actual half double crochet from round 2. next to the top of that chain 2. So I'll insert my hook and bring in my new color as I complete the slip stitch. So I join colors by putting a slip knot on my hook. It's not necessary. To me, it just feels more secure. And finish that slip stitch by pulling through both loops on your hook. And now I have the new color on my hook. And you can see the slip stitch that I just made is still in the old color, and that is fine. Do not pull that too tightly. It should look just like all the other stitches. And the second stitch of row 1 is a single crochet. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 1 single crochet. Then you'll work 2 single crochets into the next stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and do that again in the exact same stitch. We're just working some increases because it's still a curvature and we need to get around the curve. Then you'll work 10 single crochets evenly, so 1 single crochet each in the next 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Should look like that. And then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. 1, 2, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1, and then a slip stitch will be our last stitch of this row. Insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops. Okay, the end of row 1 will look like this. For row 2, you're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, turn your piece, because now we're going to work back into those red stitches or main color stitches. You will skip the first slip stitch that you just made, and in the second stitch you'll work a double crochet. And to work a double crochet, you'll yarn over, insert your hook into that second stitch, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the final 2 loops, and you just made a double crochet. The next stitch will be a shorter stitch, the half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 3, and then you'll work 12 single crochets across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oops, lost my hook there. I'm going to redo the last stitch. 12. Then you'll work a half double crochet, so the stitches are getting taller again, and then a double crochet. Again, the double is yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. You're going to leave the last stitch unworked, which is a dark brown stitch, and you'll have 16 stitches all the way across. The next 2 rows, rows 3 and 4, will be exactly the same as each other, just single crochet. So chain 1 and turn your piece and work 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch across. I always have a tendency to single crochet really tightly. So if you have that tendency, try to stay loose. You just want to try to make your stitches as uniform as possible from row to row. Okay, that should be 16 single crochets across. This is the end of row 3. Row 4 is exactly the same. Chain 1, turn, single crochet all the way across. You should still have 16 stitches And the piece is looking something like this. We're building up the length of our mug in this direction. For row 5, if you want to incorporate stripes, this is where it's going to happen. If you don't want to incorporate stripes, keep this main color on your hook and you can keep going forward, just never changing the yarn color. I'm getting my cream color, my Acadia, and I don't want to confuse people who are really new to crocheting, but to show you my tips and tricks, it's like sometimes we break the rules. So I'll talk about the rule, but I'm also just about to break it. Normally, when you incorporate a new color, you will work the last pull through of the stitch before the color change with the new color. So if I wanted to change colors, I would actually, I'm going to pull out my last stitch, okay? You would work that last stitch until its final pull through, and then, you know, I like to join a new yarn with a slip knot first, but I would do that last pull through of that stitch in a new color, and then I would begin row 5, which is chain 2 and turn, and then half double crochet across. And that's totally fine. If you want to work the classic color change in that way, do so. I do it a little differently for this project that we're working in stripes, because when I come around to do my final outline of the mug later, having the color changes done classically, I almost can't even explain it until we get there. It's more difficult for me to find a place to put my hook as we work into the sides of our stitches later. So what I do is I complete this last stitch in my main color completely in the same color. And then, don't break this off, we're going to carry it. I would introduce my new color, and I do that with my slip knot, and I'll bring it through, pull through, and I'll tighten up my old color a lot. So it's anchoring my new color, and I know I just basically made a chain, but I won't count that as a chain. That's just sort of my anchoring knot. And then I'll make my chain 2, and then turn and start row 5. You can do whatever you want, you can experiment with this, but I'm just letting you know sort of how I handle the color changes in preparation for what we have to do later. And I know, again, it's kind of like time travel. It's not going to make a lot of sense until we get there, but by the time I get there, it would have been too late. So handle the color change how you like. No matter what, it's going to turn out cute, it's going to turn out fine. I'm just showing you how I like to deal with it. For me, it feels more secure later. Alrighty, so all that talk. Row 5. Again, if you're changing colors, you want to carry your unused color or your main color. So that just means you're going to like sort of lay this yarn on top, and you're going to work over it so that this yarn can travel with us and be there on the other side when we need it. Row 5 is simply 1 half double crochet in each stitch. You've done a lot of half double crochet, so you'll notice that I'm picking up my next stitch and also making sure I'm hiding that unused yarn as I go. There's my first half double crochet. But there are no increases or decreases. 1 half double crochet in each stitch, carrying my unused main color on the inside, sandwiched inside my contrasting color half double crochet stitches. If you're a seasoned crocheter, this is all easy. No problem. If you're a beginner, it's also, you know, it's a little bit more fiddly, it's a little more stuff to hold on to, but I feel like you'll be able to manage. You'll get the swing of things, and you'll get a lot of practice in this mug project. I'm at my last half double crochet, and again, classically you would work that last pull through with the new color, but I'm gonna finish with my old color. And when you're carrying yarn, You want to make sure you haven't been carrying the yarn too tightly. Sometimes things get really cinched up and your piece might end up looking like this. So what I do is I give it a gentle stretch. I don't want to stretch it out too much because you'll really warp the shape of your piece. You just want to make sure that that carried yarn is not changing the shape of your mug. So it's not too loose or too tight. So I kind of like play with it, smush it around a little bit, just make sure that everything is looking good. I actually break off my contrasting color, giving myself enough tail to weave in later. Put my loop back on my hook, and I'm going to chain 1 back with my main color, and again I'm going to tug on this contrasting tail just to lock in my color change, and then chain 1 to start row 6. Rows 6, 7, and 8 will all be just rows of single crochet. So 6, 7, and 8 are all the same. I already chained 1 and turned to my work and work 1 single crochet in each stitch. Should still be 16 stitches all the way across. Chain 1 and turn. For row 7, same thing. 1 single crochet in each stitch. Row 8, chain 1 and turn. 1 single crochet in each stitch. It's always a good idea to check out your work, count your stitches, make sure that's still 16. And this is where we're going to change colors again to our contrasting color. And if you look at your pattern, you'll see that rows 9 through 12 are a repeat of rows 5 through 8. And what that means is the next 4 rows will be your half double crochet row in your contrasting color if you're striping. And then the next 3 rows after that, again, will be 1 single crochet in each stitch. So we're just building up sections of stripes with our contrasting color in the half double crochet, and then 3 rows in our main color in single crochet. If you're a more experienced crocheter, you do not need to watch probably up until I talk about rows 13, 14, and 15. But if you're more of a beginner, you can stay with me and we'll go through rows 9 and 12 a little bit more slowly. So don't break off your main color, but we are going to pick up the contrasting color again. I'm going to bring it in with my slip knot. Again, that's sort of the chain, the locking chain that I use for switching colors. I pull my main color very tightly to lock the new color down. And row 9, which is actually row 5, begins with chain 2 and turn. Don't forget to carry your main color along, and that's 1 row of half double crochets all the way across. We're at the end of those rows where I'm carrying my yarn. I like to manipulate it a little bit just to make sure my carried yarn has been neither too tight nor too loose. Sometimes if it's really loose, you can see loops of that main color yarn peeking out between your stitches. There's no looping here. I'm mostly making sure it hasn't been pulling my project too tightly. Okay, I'm going to break off my contrasting color. Then I'll bring in my main color again with a chain. That does not count as any chain in the pattern. That's my locking chain. I'll pull tightly on the old color, which was my contrasting color, to cinch it up, not counting as a chain. And then chain 1 and turn to start my next 3 rows which will be all single crochet. Again, this is rows 10, 11, 12, which are the same as rows 6, 7, and 8. And that is simply one single crochet in each stitch. Chain 1 and turn. My second row of single crochet in this sequence of the striping. I forgot to mention that the reason why I don't carry my contrasting stripe yarn through all these rows of single crochet is it's that warping that I mentioned. I feel like that extra carried yarn adds to the density of the fabric, and also there will be more room for error for it to skew the shape of my mug. So if you feel comfortable and are confident with carrying your yarn, you could carry both yarns back and forth and you'd have fewer ends to weave in. But I'm not that confident in my carrying, so that's why I snip off the contrasting color each time. Let's take a look. I'm at the end of row 12 here. It's going to have 2 stripes in our contrasting color. And the last 3 rows here, rows 13, 14, and 15, are a repeat of rows 5, 6, and 7. So that means we're going to switch colors again to our contrasting color, work 1 half double crochet stripe, and then the last 2 rows will be our single crochet in our main color. And the reason why it's not 3 rows in the main color like we just did is I want to make sure we land with the right side of the mug facing us. And the right side of the mug is the right side of the drink rounds. That's how that math happened to work out. So again, we'll switch colors. If you're striping, bring in my contrasting color, again with my slip knot in that first chain, which counts as my locking chain. Pull my main color tightly, and then chain 2. Turn. Make sure to carry that main color, and we'll do our 1 row of half double crochet. Gonna assess, make sure my carried yarn was not cinching up my work. It felt a little tight in there, so I'm glad that I took a moment to release the yarn a little bit. Clip my contrasting yarn. Pick up my main color, do my locking chain, pull that contrasting color tail tight, chain 1 and turn, and rows 14 and 15 are just 1 single crochet in each stitch across. It's 14, chain 1 and turn, and then row 15 is the same thing. Single crochet all the way across. Okay, you do have a lot of ends sticking out if you've been striping the way that I have. It's a little annoying, I'm not gonna lie, but it'll all work out. It's totally fine. We're now at the step where we've finished crocheting the body of our mug, and you're not going to turn the work because now the right side of the hot chocolate rounds are facing us, and that's where we want to be. And we're going to work 1 round of single crochet along those 3 edges. I suppose if I wanted the math to be equal, I could have done 1 more row this way. I've only just thought of that just now, which makes more sense because this only has 2 rows of single crochet, and this was 3 and this was 3, and if you want to make it even, we do 1 more, but let's stick with the pattern. If you want to play around, you could go all the way around, but for the pattern, we're just going to go the 2 sides and the top and leave this bottom without an outline. Okay, sorry. Sometimes I'm just thinking aloud. This is all just very real. I'm just a person. All right, so if you feel comfortable just eyeballing how you want to go around, you totally could. I've put very specific instructions in the pattern about where these stitches go in case guidance makes you feel more comfortable. But if the guidance looks too nitpicky and you're like, it didn't look right when I followed the guidance, that's okay. I think the important part here is that the mug looks like you want it to. So as I go around, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm doing, but if you feel like it's not working for you and you feel comfortable making some changes, do that. To begin working on the edge of these rows, I think about how many single crochets I want to crochet from this point to this point. The dark brown part is kind of a different matter. There are 15 rows here, 15 rows of the mug. So I want to imagine putting one single crochet on the edge of each of those rows. Even the half double crochet, even though it's a slightly wider stitch or taller stitch, you won't be able to see very particular places to place your hook, which is why I'm kind of doing all this explaining. It starts to become intuitive. So you get a feeling for how far apart your stitches are for a normal row when you're working here. And you want to feel like you're working that same distance of stitches apart from each other as you're working across the rows. So you don't want them too bunched tightly together and you don't want them too far apart, because that'll change the shape of your work. You're just trying to make sure that your work lays flat and it's not ruffling or puckering or pinching. Okay? That's a really long explanation. I'm very sorry. So what I do is I work one more single crochet into the same stitch as my last stitch. That's just to get me around the corner, and that counts for me as the first of my 15 along the edge. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 15. You'll notice here, I don't always get this hole. I'm just kind of noticing this, of course, for my tutorial. This little space here, this like hole from working a single crochet into the side of a turning chain. You can try moving up one chain. I think there's still going to be a hole. It's just that you're pulling that turning chain away from the body of the mug. I don't know that I have a solution for that, but you can see how I changed my stitch from being in the first turning chain to the second turning chain, if that makes sense to you. So sometimes you can close up gaps by just moving around where you place your stitches. But again, if you can't resolve it, weave it in when you're weaving your ends. I think that weaving in the ends can do some more work than you might think. In the pattern, we're now at the place where it says like at the dark brown section, because now we're in the dark brown section. And because of the curvature and because this is curving downward, I need a taller stitch here in my outline to make up for that. So I'll work a half double crochet into this first dark brown stitch. You may not need to. If you find that working a half double crochet there gives you a wiggly weird line, you don't need to do it. These are just the tips that I use to help just compensate for different shaping, different areas of the mug. So if that half double crochet doesn't work for you, just work a single crochet there. And then since we're kind of working in the round, we need to work some increases. So in the next stitch, I'll work 2 single crochets. 1, 2, 1 single crochet in the next, 2 single crochets in the next, 1, 2, and then 1 single crochet, and another 2 single crochets up top. Okay, like this. Now you're at the top going across that dark brown section. I'm going to work 10 single crochets evenly across the top here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we'll start increasing again. So 2 single crochets in the next. 1, 2, 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets in the next. 1, 2, and then 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets in the next again, and then 1 single crochet into that last dark brown stitch. So we've gone all the way across the top, and now we're on our last edge. And just to talk you through here again, to make up for any curvature, I might replace even the last single crochet I just made with a half double crochet, because it kind of goes inward a little bit here. You could work the next couple stitches in half double crochet, but ultimately we want to get about 15 stitches from this point on, from here to here. I can't explain it. I don't know the physics or the science of it, but if I work the exact same number of stitches on both sides, my second side always seems too long, like I've stretched out and added too many stitches. So here's my tip and trick. I work fewer on this side than I do on this side, and again, I can't explain why. It just seems to help the shaping better. So as I begin my outline here, I might try to do 13 single crochets or 14 single crochets, but usually 15 I feel like is over the edge, and this will just get really long and look weird. Maybe not for you. Give it a try. I'm just, again, letting you know what works for me. I do think I'll actually take out my last single crochet and put a half double crochet there. Definitely a half double crochet, because this goes way in here as far as shaping. So that's 1, maybe another half double crochet, 2, and I'll keep counting about 14 total stitches down this edge. Let's see, 2, 14, and then you'll join by slip stitching to this first single crochet from round 15, or from row 15. So you can go ahead and break off. And to break off, we're gonna yarn over one more time and pull the tail all the way through. Alright, let's give our mug a handle. The other thing I like to do is, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm constantly kind of squishing this around, flattening it out. In sewing, I think that's referred to as finger pressing. So I'm constantly kind of pressing this out just to see its true shape. As we've been crocheting, everything's been crumpled and all the yarn is pretty tense. So I'm trying to get an idea of what this actually looks like by kind of smushing it all out. I feel like sometimes we're like, oh, my piece looks really bad, and it's just okay to like smush it out a little bit. This is the right side of our mug facing. To work the handle, we're going to flip this over so the wrong side is facing. I'm going to work my handle on what is the left side. I'm going to turn this a little bit, and I'm going to join my yarn at about what feels like row 3 or 4. Maybe what, like row 4 of the mug. So row 4 is the last main color row before the first stripe. So like right here. I'm going to join my yarn here at this stitch. I always like to join with my slip knot. pull through, and you're going to chain 10, and I chain 10 pretty tightly for the handle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And take a look at the body of your mug. We're going to skip 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and you're going to slip stitch into the 4th stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through all the loops. 1 slip stitch. You're going to do another slip stitch in the next stitch. 2, and then another slip stitch in the next stitch. 3. This is traveling the side of your mug handle, and it's going to act as the turning chain. So turn your work so the right side is facing you. You do not need to make any turning chains, and you're just going to start half double crocheting into this loop that we made. You're not half double crocheting into the chains, you're half double crocheting into the loop. Okay, so yarn over and work your first half double crochet into the loop. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're doing 14 total half double crochets into this handle loop. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Back on the body of the mug, you'll skip the next stitch and then slip stitch into the following stitch. And that joins the top edge of the mug handle back onto the mug. And you can break off this end. Yarn over and pull all the way through. Now we have a very cute little handle for our hot cocoa mug. And the next step is to weave in all of these ends. And I know that's everyone's favorite part of a crochet project, but it is an unfortunate necessity. I'm going to grab your tapestry needle, and I'm definitely not demonstrating weaving in all the ends, but what I did want to point out was sometimes when you work the hot cocoa part, the drink part, because we worked a lot of increases on the ends, sometimes there are gaps, and for some magical reason I don't have them on this particular sample, but I just wanted to point out that when you're weaving in ends, as I briefly mentioned before, this is also an opportunity to be able to sew up any gaps that you might have in your work. So if you can sort of see with my finger, there might be a bit of a gap here. So while I'm weaving in my end, I might just be intentional about putting a couple stitches back and forth across that area and cinching it up. And then when we typically weave in an end, we'll go through a couple stitches in one direction. And you want to make sure your needle is traveling inside the stitch and is not just popping up on the other side. So if I can't see much needle on both sides, that means I'm going inside the stitch. And you want to pull that, and don't pull too tightly because you don't want to warp your work. You just want the yarn tail to sort of be passively traveling inside here. And then it's always a good idea to switch directions and come and weave through the other way in the row right next to where you started. The change in direction helps lock in that tail and gives it less of a chance to wiggle out and undo itself. So again, you want to check that you're not popping out on the other side. Pull through. Again, don't pull too tightly, and then you can clip that close. You want to go ahead and weave in all of your ends. And the next step is to stitch on our swirl. And you don't have to include this if you don't want to, but I think it's a really cute detail. If you're comfortable with surface slip stitch, this would definitely be a great place to use it, but because I want to make this particular tutorial as beginner friendly as possible, I'm going to use embroidery. We are going to use the stitches that already exist as a guide for where our hot cocoa swirl is going to go. So this is where our foundation chain was, right in the center. And there are still like gaps that you can feel going in and out here from the chain. So we're going to start stitching a center line across this chain. And then we're going to hop up to the next row. We're going to kind of come up here and then follow the curvature of the spaces between round 1 and 2. So I'm going to start on this side of my foundation chain. And I have about an arm length of that tan colored yarn. I'm going to weave in and out of these stitches like this. Pull through. Don't pull too tightly, you don't want to warp this shape. You can also do one stitch at a time. I'm weaving through a couple just because it's more efficient for me, but if that makes you uncomfortable, just go one at a time. I'm making sure I'm not pulling that too tightly. I'm at the end of the foundation chain. I need to put my needle inside one of these stitches to kind of come around this curve. So I'm going to go into this stitch and come back out of this space that's in between round 1 and 2. Change direction and go up 1 round. And then I can weave my needle in and out of these stitches and spaces again between round 1 and 2. If you want to just freehand a doodle here and not follow the shape of the rounds, feel free to do that as well. I haven't done that, but it would be interesting to see. I'm going to keep following this curvature around. Do one more line on the bottom here. Always making sure I'm not pulling too tightly. And you can see we have some spaces to fill in. Instead of doing a back stitch, which uses up more yarn, I do like a running stitch for my first pass, and then I'll come back around and fill in the spaces on the second pass. So I'm going to come back around the next direction, and what I do, just so I don't split yarn in places where like 2 pieces of yarn might share the same space, is I'll, instead of just stabbing into this space and maybe splitting this yarn, I'll think of poking in on top of that stitch and then coming at the bottom on the other side. So the next stitch, instead of just poking right in the center, I'll think about inserting my needle above that piece of yarn, and as I travel over, I'll come underneath that piece of yarn. You don't have to do that. For me, it's an aesthetic thing and just a way for me to have a path and know where I'm putting my needle each time. I imagine there will be many different ways of adding this hot cocoa swirl, and I'm pretty excited to see what y'all come up with. There's definitely room for your own artistry and your own creativity in this project, and that's really my favorite. There are going to be so many different permutations and varieties of your mugs. Super excited, like honestly excited. Okay, again, I'm making sure I'm not pulling these stitches too tightly. When you've gone all the way around, you can flip your work over and secure the ends of this embroidery. I'm going to tie a knot tie 2 knots, and then weave this end. And instead of weaving through more than one round or row, I'll just poke my needle. I'll like skip one loop of this dark brown yarn and then poke my needle back through to secure it that way. And this side needs to have a little knot as well. This mug is looking pretty cute. It's pretty much done. If you want, you can sew on the marshmallows, and I don't know if you really need to see me do that. I guess we could do one. Let's do one. I recommend from 3 to 5 pom-poms. This is totally aesthetically up to you. I think it's cute. Let's say you're crocheting an entire mug scarf. I think it's really cute for from mug to mug, for the placement to be different of all the marshmallows, and the number can be different too, so it just kind of looks natural. I kind of like mastering the art of making something look intentionally random, so however you want to design your marshmallow scape is up to you. Let's say for this one I want to do 3. And I want to keep in mind they'll look something like this. So again, I just like to pre-plan. It might end up looking differently as I sew everything on later, but it's nice to give yourself a good idea of what's about to happen. So I'll sew on my first one here. And I'll go in the back and pick up a very tiny bite of yarn. I have a threaded needle. And I'm going to just anchor this with a knot on the back. Like I already have a knot in my thread. And I'll go kind of in that, oops, separate these. It's 2 strands, knotted. And I'll stick my needle in between the 2 strands, at like around where the knot is, and then pull this through. Oops. Getting caught on everything. Alright, so this is anchored into the yarn, and then close to the knot I'll poke my needle back out to the right side of the mug so that it's ready to have a marshmallow sewn in. I'll grab my marshmallow, and as you pierce through the pom-pom, you'll feel that they will definitely have kind of a center. So if you don't center your needle, you'll kind of be on the outskirts, the fringe of your pom-pom, and it can come right back out. It'll just pop out. So you want to kind of find like the densest, kind of toughest part of the pom-pom, and that's how you know that it's going to be as secure as possible. So I can feel that it's thicker. It's in a denser spot. So I'll pass my needle through, and then going to see where to stick my needle back through. That looks like about here, because I don't want the stitch to be too visible. Like so. And I think at least 2 stitches is a good idea for security of the marshmallow. So let me see on the back side where this has come out. I might move over a little bit, insert my needle back out, see where that's coming out from, and then pass my needle again through the center of the pom-pom, kind of feeling that really dense, thick bit. Getting in a good tug so that my stitches are pretty secure, and then finding where to insert my needle back to the other side of the mug. And this feels pretty secure to me, and here you can tie it off. I'm just tying it by picking up a little bite of yarn again, and then putting my needle through that loop. Oh, didn't go through. Here we go. And then I'll pick up that tiny loop of thread again and pass my needle through one more time. I might do a third. Just depends on sort of the orientation of your stitches and if your knots are actually knotting. That feels good. And then I'll insert through a couple stitches to hide that thread tail. And then clip. And you'll just repeat that with as many marshmallows as you like. You might be wondering if you can use glue, and you could. I would suggest using Fabri-Tac if you want to have a nice washable, strong fabric glue. If you're careful with glue and you're confident with glue and your glue is making good contact with the pom-pom and the mug and you feel very certain that it's not going to come off, you can definitely practice on a swatch. You can use the glue. But like if I were making this to give to someone, I would probably secure with sewing. Just I feel like it's more likely to stay on. But this is up to you and sort of what time you have and what resources you have. So go ahead and attach as many marshmallows as you like. I'm going to switch to this one, which already has marshmallows on it, and then we can talk about blocking. If I just leave the mug in its relaxed natural state right now, it's doing kind of an angling thing. So I'm going to get my blocking mat. I'm going to put this kind of down on the corner because I want to fit another mug on this same mat. And you want to use a couple T-pins to pin this into the shape that you like. So I'm going to line up, if your blocking mat has lines, those lines are like really helpful. So I know that I want the bottom of my mug to line up with these lines. I put one there and one there. And then I can see this edge is really like kind of slanting, so I want to be really thoughtful about making this more perpendicular to the bottom. I might look angled to you anyway just because of my camera angle, but I'm pinning this, I'm not stretching it out too much, right? Because you don't want to stretch out your work. You're just trying to clean up the shape. So you can squish it a little bit, but I wouldn't really try to like get things really stretchy. Like that. If there's some shaping within the hot cocoa you want to achieve, you can pin those areas down too. Trying to peek ahead over the camera to see what this looks like in real life. It's looking a lot better than when it was looking angled like this. Just to save time and be efficient in the real world, I'm going to stick another mug on up here and pin that down. Okay, these are pinned out in a way that I like them, and I just don't really want to wait for my iron to heat up, so I'm going to use a hairdryer. And I would say you want to put it on high heat, and if you can control sort of the strength of the air coming out, I will put that on low so you're just not blowing things all over the place. And you want to maybe go 1 to 2 minutes over each piece. It doesn't take long. And I notice with this yarn, if I blow it around too much, it starts sort of flicking the fibers off the surface, and I'll end up with sort of a hairy, fuzzy looking piece, which is a look, but not necessarily a look that I want for this project. So I think be mindful of blow drying it for too long. And that is something that probably will not happen if you use a steamer or an iron on a steam setting. I like to take a break and kind of see if the yarn feels like it's been warming, because again, it's that heat that we want to block the yarn into place. You need to let these cool completely. Do not unpin them. Do not remove them from your blocking mat or towel or cushion. These need to cool in order to lock in that reshaping. So if I'm making a scarf, what I might do is crochet 4 mugs and then block some of them and then let those cool while I make my next batch of mugs. While my sample mugs are blocking, let's make some cute appliques. Again, these are completely optional, but I like to add them onto the mugs that don't have stripes, just so every mug can have like a little fun detail on them. I'm going to start with the heart, and I begin with pulling out enough yarn for sewing on later. This just makes it so that my yarn tail for sewing starts at the bottom of my heart. It's not important where the yarn tail is, but for me while I'm sewing, it just helps me make sure I'm sewing my heart in the right place. So that's just a little trick that I do. So pull out some yarn for sewing and then put a slip knot on your hook. We're working the heart in rows, so you're going to start with chain 2. 1, 2, and for the first row you'll skip the first stitch or skip the first chain and then work 2 single crochets into the second chain. That's 1 and then 2. For row 2 you'll chain 1 and turn and work 2 single crochets in each stitch. Here's 2 in the first and then here's 2 in the second. So at the end of row 2 you should have 4 stitches across. For round 3 we'll chain 1, or row 3 we'll chain 1 and turn and work 2 single crochets in the first stitch and then 1 single crochet each into the next 2. It's 1, 2, and then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. 1 and then 2. At the end of row 3 you should have 6 stitches. It's starting to look like a little triangle. For row 4, chain 1 and turn. You're going to work 3 single crochets evenly. So 1 in the first stitch, 1 in the second stitch, 1 in the third stitch. We're in the middle of the row right now. You're going to work 2 single crochets in the next stitch, just 1 increase in the center, and in the remaining 2 stitches, 1 single crochet each. So at the end of this row you should have 7 stitches. For row 5, chain 1 and turn, and simply work 1 single crochet in each stitch. No more increasing. 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. For the last row, chain 1 and turn, skip the first stitch, and in the second stitch work 5 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skip the next stitch, and in this middle stitch slip stitch. Skip the next stitch, and in the following stitch work 5 double crochets one more time. 2, 3, 4, 5, and in the last stitch you'll join with a slip stitch. And you can break off just enough yarn tail to weave in. And that's it. For the candy cane, you got some options. I provided a pattern for a candy cane that curves to the right and a candy cane that curves to the left, and you can use one or the other or both. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to show you both. The other option you have is you can crochet the entire candy cane in a base color and then embroider on your stripes later, or you can crochet the stripes into the candy cane by alternating and carrying 2 different colors. That feels really fiddly. It is my preference aesthetically, but again, to keep this tutorial beginner friendly, I'm just going to crochet the candy cane all in one color. But if you're feeling adventurous and you want to try changing colors, I would suggest 2 stitches of your base color and then 1 stitch of your stripe color and alternating 2, 1, 2, 1, so your contrasting stripe colors have a little bit more space in between them. Here is the candy cane that curves to the right in one color, starting with the cream color. And I'll put a slip knot on my hook, and we'll begin with a chain 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm going to skip the first 2 chains from my hook and single crochet into the third one. 1 single crochet. And then in the next 3 stitches, work 2 single crochets. That's going to create a curvature. So 1 and 2 in the same chain, 1 and 2 in the next chain, 1 and 2 in the following chain. And in the remaining 7 chains, 1 single crochet each. So stop increasing. Oops, I'm going to redo that stitch because my yarn got a little splitty. So 1, 2, it's hard for me to see, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. And that's it. I would break off, leaving about 12 inches of yarn for sewing this on later. And then you can yarn over and pull that all the way through. So with the right side of your stitches facing, this is what this little candy cane looks like. It curves up to the right. I'll show you embellishing with some embroidered stripes. So I'm taking out about an arm length of red yarn right now. Some people tell me I instruct people to break off too much yarn and it's yarn wasting, but I would rather have too much than too little. If I have to rejoin more yarn for seaming or embroidery, that makes me very upset. So you can always make one, and if you figure out how much exact yarn you need, then you can maybe write down a note to yourself and go with that. What I like to do is start at the base of the candy cane. So I'll come up in sort of the right bottom corner, pull through until I have a good tail, a short tail here so I can weave my short tail in later. And I'm going to make diagonal stripes, so I won't go straight over to the first stitch. I'll think about inserting my hook into the second stitch, but I won't go under both loops like I normally would for seaming. I'm going to insert my hook in between the loops of that stitch. This just kind of makes my stripe travel farther and have more of a presence. I'll come back out in the same spot so I can put 2 stitches for each stripe. And then I'll skip the next chain and come back up at the next chain. Remember, not the one directly over, but I'll go up 1 and then in between the 2 loops of that stitch. And how you do this is up to you. This is, oops, for me, very easy and looks good, but I do encourage you to play around with how you want to do your own embellishments. You can travel all the way up this candy cane. Looks pretty cute. Then you would tie off the ends of your embroidery yarn and then weave in everything except your long sewing tail for later. Here's what this little candy cane looks like with all the ends woven in and our sewing tail. The candy cane that curves to the left is going to be very similar. It's sort of the right candy cane in reverse. So we'll start with chain 13 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We'll skip the first 2 chains from the hook and work a single crochet in the third chain. And you're going to work a total of 7 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. And here's where we're going to start our increases. So 2 single crochets each and the next 3 chains. 1, 2, 3. You should have 1 chain left and work 1 single crochet. Oops. This one's a little different because the edge of the single crochet is really straight, and I kind of want the tip of my candy cane to have a little bit more of a smoother edge. We're going to slip stitch into that same chain. And then you can break off, leaving your sewing tail. This is what the curving to the left will look like. For embroidering the candy cane that curves to the left, I basically did the same exact thing except the mirror image. And now that I'm looking at them, I probably could have put 1 more candy cane stripe in these areas, but you can go ahead and play with that and see what you like the best. This is what it looks like when you crochet the candy canes with 2 colors at the same time. Again, I did 2 stitches in the cream and then 1 stitch in the red. The foundation chain is just all cream. I'm gonna get a little bit up close so you can compare the crocheted with 2 different colors and then crocheted with 1 and then embroidered. They have different looks. This one is actually growing on me. At first I preferred this, so this is what I've been sewing on all my mugs, but this is quite cute also and kind of has a nice texture, so you can decide which you prefer. If you're sewing appliques to mugs, I really don't have any tips or tricks for it. I prefer a running stitch going all the way around. You could also whip stitch the edge. I do think that whip stitching sort of smushes the edge of your applique down more, and I prefer more of that 3-dimensional pop. You can use a pin here if you want to stabilize this. I generally don't. I just kind of go for it. And again, no real tips or tricks. I just kind of take a tiny bite of the mug, pull my needle through, and then come back up through the applique. The idea is that I'm trying to avoid seeing any of this red stitching on the back of my mug. However, if it shows through, it's super not the end of the world. So I'll come back down into my applique, pick up just a tiny little bit of mug to anchor that stitch, and then come back up through the applique. And that's really it. Pretty simple. I kind of keep turning it around, reorienting it to see if I like where it is. Sometimes these things can start angling in funny ways, so I just want to make sure I'm catching that early in case that's happening. Try not to warp your applique as you're sewing it. Kind of keep checking, seeing how that looks. I put mine right in the center, but you know, you can put this at an angle in a corner of the mug. You can put more than 1 heart on a mug. Lots of options. And I'll show you the back. There are no stitches showing on the back because I'm just taking those really tiny bites on the surface of the mug. So keep going all the way around in the same way. I've gone all the way around my applique and I tied a knot, and to hide the end you can weave through a couple stitches of the applique, and then I'm just tucking my needle back underneath the applique, kind of in between the heart and the mug, to hide this tail. You can snip. That's all finished, and I also wanted to show you a pink mug that has the candy canes on it. I chose to arrange them facing away from each other. If you wanted to, you could also have them facing toward each other, and it makes like a little heart shape, which is cute. This is what your mugs are all starting to look like. I did not put marshmallows on these just for the sake of my demonstration and saving time. If you're simply making a couple to send to the Craft Yarn Council to have their volunteers seam together a scarf, Or maybe you went ahead and made the section scarf and you're just making a couple mugs to use as big appliques. These are good to go. If you are going forward and making an entire mug scarf, you'll need to make about 11 or 12 mugs. I'm about 5'3", and 11 mugs is good for my height, but if you want to make it 12 mugs, that probably would fit a taller person a bit better, but you can play with that length. Let's look at this diagram again. It's a total of 11 mugs, and I have one strand of 6 mugs and one strand of 5 mugs. If you are making a 12 mug scarf, I would make your strands 7 and then 5. I usually don't like to have the join between my two strands right in the middle of the scarf. Because of how I wear it, I just don't want that join to be like right in the middle, like in the front of my neck. Because I wrap my scarves all the way around and have the two ends dangling in front of my body. So that's an aesthetic choice for me and something for you to keep in mind as well. I'm gonna follow the order that's on my diagram. I want to make sure the right sides of both are facing you and place one right on top of the other. I have about 24 inches of yarn strung on a tapestry needle, and I'm going to use the color of the mug that's on the top. I just like to stay consistent in that way, but you can use a contrasting color or you can use the bottom mug color. It's totally up to you. And what you want to do is think about the fact that you're sewing a straight line to a curved line, and that means you can't sew, you know, this stitch to this stitch. It'll warp your pieces. And to be honest, sometimes where I sew these together can differ from mug to mug because I am a person with a unique hand. Not all the mugs end up turning out the same, and that's totally normal, and I want you to feel okay about that. But what I do is I'll think about the bottom of my top mug. It's a straight line. I do want some of the edge of the top mug to remain unsewn because I want to see that corner shape in my mug. So you can think about how the stitches on this mug will either start maybe here, like 2 stitches inward, right? Like not right in the corner. And I'll look at my bottom mug and you have, you know, this line of 10 single crochets that was part of our outline, and they're bordered by the 2 single crochets that are in the same stitch. And if you're not used to looking at the stitches, that can be tricky to look at, but if you are used to looking at the stitches, you can use those increases as guides. You could count. I know that I want to maybe start here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It looks like I would be seaming together 14 stitches on the top piece. And I can see where I think that 14 stitches would be centered here. So I have my 10 single crochets and then the 2 increases on either side of it, and that would also be 14 stitches. So I could start seaming maybe in the first single crochet of that increase. And if you want to just eyeball it, do that. If it works, it works. The only thing that can kind of go awry here is that the pieces will end up looking like this or like this, and that's an easy fix. You just pull out your stitches and try again. It's no big deal. If you start to see it's kind of going askew as you sew, it's probably better to take out the stitches sooner rather than later. So what I'm doing is a simple whip stitch. I'm going from front to back in my bottom piece, and then from back to front in my top piece, and repeating that. We're going to whip around from front to back of the bottom piece and back to front of the top piece. Yes, it is a visible stitch, and I don't mind it. If you are comfortable with ladder stitch or mattress stitch, do that. It's just those options are not ones that I'm super comfortable with, and for me the whip stitch goes by really efficiently if I'm doing this on my own and not on camera. And I feel like for me, if something is difficult, I'm not going to do it. So you can make your own choices, sort of aesthetics versus what you're comfortable with. Okay, this is 13 and 14, and I feel like 12 to 14 stitches is going to be your sweet spot. for seaming these together. At first I thought they were askew. At first I thought I would have to redo this. You can also hold it up. You won't be able to see, but it helps me to hold it up and see how they would hang on my body or somebody's body. And you can decide whether or not you need another pass. I feel like it's looking pretty good to me. It might be, if I were to change anything, I wouldn't start in the first single crochet of the increase. I would move one over to the left and start in the second single crochet of the increase. Feel free to play around with that. You can go ahead and tie 2 knots and then weave both ends in. And it's really that simple, seaming all your mugs together. Remember, you want, if you're doing an 11 mug scarf, 1 strand of 6 and 1 strand of 5, and then we're going to connect the tops of the 2 strands. I'm going to pretend that I have my 2 completed strands and that I'm going to join them at the top. Again, make sure that they're both with right sides facing up toward you. I'm going to go like this. So, you know, on this side, all your mug handles will be going one way, and on this side, all the mug handles will be going the other way, and that is correct. Again, this is just for demo purposes. My 2 top joining mugs are not this color. For my diagram, I'd be joining a cream colored mug with a pink one, so I know I was following the diagram beforehand, but now we're sort of going off diagram. And you want to think similarly to joining your mug strands one on top of each other, except this time you're joining 2 pieces that are curved, so you might not get quite as many stitches. When I was joining these 2, I got in 14 stitches, and this one just might be 12. Again, if you have too many stitches and you start pinching together the curved edges, you're going to get some warping in your scarf. So we want to avoid that. You can just eyeball it, center it as best you can. I've got like 18 to 24 inches of yarn on my needle. And here's another strategy you can use if you're feeling a little hesitant about sewing these together. You can just start in the middle. You'll have to rethread your needle, but it can kind of help you see how far on each side to go. So I'm going to pick this as the middle and start whip stitching in one direction, and you would have to leave enough yarn tail to whip stitch in the other direction, so keep that in mind. Don't pull the yarn tail too short. And I'll start whip stitching toward the left edge and see what this looks like. And then I'll thread my needle with the other tail and start whip stitching the other way. And just because of how this is oriented, I'm going to go from the top to the bottom, the opposite of what I was doing before, just so the stitches look the same, but it's still a whip stitch. I'm not even counting them at this point. You can count them and make notes so that you can get consistency later. Let's just give this a go. Okay, this is looking, I have to hold it up again, it's easier for me to see how it would wear. The bottom piece might be a little bit askew. It might be shifted a little bit too far. Like, I feel like this red piece is too much this way and this white piece is too much this way. So it might be 1 stitch off. I'm going to try maybe seaming together 1 more stitch on this side to see if that helps even things out. What does that look like? I don't think that helped very much. Let's see. I don't know, actually, I feel like it's looking better now that I'm connecting more stitches. I'm going to rethread my yarn on the left side and connect 1 more stitch. That's actually feeling really good to me. Yeah, that feels good. Then you can go ahead and knot both sides and weave in these ends, and your scarf would be complete at that point. Here's one that I've completed, and it has all 11 of the mugs, just like the diagram. Everyone has a little sprinkle of marshmallows. Here's the join at the center, or I guess off center because it's a strand of 6 and a strand of 5. And if you've also completed a full scarf, great job! It's quite a feat, and it's very cute. If you made a scarf with sections, and I'm probably not going to do a tutorial for that because I wrote it to be extremely beginner friendly and you should just be able to follow the pattern. But here's a close-up look of that scarf. This is the ribbon candy stripe. This is the fun peppermint bark texture. It's actually lemon peel stitch. This is the candy cane stripe. And here's the marshmallow bauble. And just to thematically connect everything together, I sewed mug appliques to the bottom panels. I like to leave the mug handles unsewn. I just think it's a fun little detail. Congrats on completing your hot cocoa mug scarf. Don't forget to go to warmupamerica.org to find the address to send all your donations to, whether it's a full scarf or as many mugs as you had time to make. We appreciate all of them and everything is helpful. Also, don't forget to stitch one up for yourself. They're so fun to wear. They're a definite showstopper and conversation piece. Thank you so much for participating in our Stitched with Sweets campaign with me and Warm Up America and the Hallmark channel. I hope you all have a very sweet and cozy holiday.